Hello and welcome to episode 2 of Azure Snippets. Today we're going to delve into some of the secrets of the Azure portal. I imagine most people watching are going to have used the Azure portal at least a little bit. Obviously it's the main interface you're going to interact with all the Azure resources and to manage those resources. But what we want to cover today is just some hints and tips about bits of the portal you might not be aware of that might be useful to the work you're doing and might help save you some time or make things a little bit more convenient. So the first thing we're going to look at is the default page that's going to load when you actually open the portal. So you have two options here. What I've got loading at the moment is a dashboard, and this is what used to be the default and the only option when you logged into the portal was showing a dashboard. My dashboard here is just showing some basic lists of resources, some tutorials, the default options you get. However, the other option you can do now is to show this new home screen. So this gives you a curated summary of services in Azure, some tutorials, and then lists of resources that you've used recently. You can switch between those two on here on the left by going to Dashboard or Home, but you can also set which is the default for when you load the portal by going into the Settings menu and choosing either Home or Dashboard. And I'm going to set that to Dashboard. So speaking of dashboards, what you're actually seeing when you click on the dashboard is what's called an Azure Dashboard. It's a service running in Azure that you can customize however you want to show whatever data you want on this dashboard. And whenever I go in and see people working in Azure, oftentimes they're just using the default here. They're not taking advantage of what they can use this dashboard platform for. So the first thing you can do is you can come into your dashboard, you can click Edit, and this will allow you to move things around, increase or decrease the size of options where it's allowed, and add more options in here. So we can add a clock in. We can add some using group lists. So you can add lots of options here, and there's a whole host of options that you can add to this dashboard. But actually, I find trying to find the bits and pieces I want to add to the dashboard in this list fairly difficult. So instead of doing that, what you can do is we'll just close that dashboard. And what you can do is actually go to the service you're interested in. So we're going to have a look at this Kubernetes service. And so I want to put some of my metrics for this service on the dashboard. I can go to the metrics option and I can select the option I want. So let's have a look at the total number of available CPU cores. It's a fairly boring metric, but it'll do for this demonstration. And you can click on the option here to pin to dashboard and either pin it to the current dashboard or pin it to another one. So we'll pin it to the current dashboard. And if we head back to our dashboard now, we've got this chart on here. We can then come into Edit and we can move it around if we want. So we're going to move it down there, make it slightly smaller. Save that. But that I find is a much easier way of finding the resources I want to show on my dashboard and actually pinning them. And you can do it with anything. It doesn't have to be a metric. So I can go in here. Let's go and have a look at some of my functions. And I'm just going to go to this function and go pin to dashboard. And now I've got a little widget here about my particular function that shows me some information about the status that it's stopped. And if I click on it, it'll take me straight to that function. So they're quite useful for giving you a brief summary of your services and giving you a quick way to get into them if you use them a lot. So you can customize those dashboards however you want. So it's just one dashboard. I can have as many dashboards as I want. So I can come in here and you can see in this drop down I've got a couple of dashboards. I can click a new dashboard. And I'm going to add some data about, just add the clock back in, and some service health information, and so on. And I can customize that however I want. And now I have another dashboard. And I can switch between dashboards using that drop down and use whichever one I want. I also have the option here to share my dashboard. So if I click on this, I can now save this dashboard to a subscription and click publish. And that dashboard is now going to get published and will be available to anyone who uses this subscription to be able to view and uses their own dashboard as well. So we can customize dashboards to show whatever information we want about our service in Azure. We can also customize the actual portal itself. So if you come up here to this settings menu, you see here we've got quite a lot of options about what we can change in the portal. So we can determine whether or not we get logged out after some inactivity. The default there is never, but you can change that to a period of time if you're worried about your security. Again, we can choose between the default view of home or dashboard. We can change the color theme, so we can switch over to a dark theme or a more blue theme, and so on. We can also change to a high contrast theme if that's something we need. We can change the black one. We can see you get a much more high contrast view. Switch that back to none. We can turn on or off notifications that come from the top menu. They get to pop up when we've got notifications. We can allow changing the theme by double clicking on the dashboard. And we can turn on or off the new all resources browser experience. So if I disable that for a moment and head on over to all resources, you can see this is the current view. You're probably familiar with this. Just a list of resources with some filters on the top. If we go back and change it to the new view, it's going to give us a slightly different view. So we've still got the list of resources in the middle here, but the filters are on the left with more of a tick box approach that we can see what we're filtering. It's pretty similar, but it does give you a slightly different view. I imagine this is going to be rolled out to everyone at some point, but this is going to allow you to have a sort of advanced view of that. Another view we can change is on this list on the left. So this gives us quick links to go into particular services in the portal. And the options here can be changed just by selecting your different favorites. So if we go into all services, and you can see here that some of these services have got this gold star, which indicates they're a favorite. So you can unfavorite and favorite things you want, which will determine what's shown on the left-hand side. So if I remove cost management and let's remove help and support, they'll disappear from the left. And then I want to show function apps, and I want to show firewalls. Let's go with that. So now I've added those on, they'll appear on my list on the left. And so you can customize that left-hand side list to show whatever you want just by coming in here and favoriting or unfavoriting the particular items. You can also come in and change the order of these options just by clicking on the little icon to the right, and we can move them up or down the list and reorder that as we please. Another layout change we can make is in actually what data is displayed on the grid. So if we go and have a look at virtual machines, you can see here we're going to get a grid listing all the virtual machines we've got and some information about those machines. These are the default options. But we can come in here and we can actually click on edit columns, and it will allow us to choose what columns we want to show. So let's say I'm not interested in what subscription they are, and I'm not interested in what type they are because I know they're virtual machines, but I do want to see if the disks are encrypted, and I do want to know what tags they've got. So click apply, and that's going to change the view. So now I can see that these disks are not encrypted, and I can see they've got some tags, and there is actually a little edit icon here, so I can actually click on that and edit the tags directly from here. But also if I shrink some of these windows, I can actually then see some of the tags as well. I can also reorder these columns. So if we go back into the edit columns list, I can drag these options around to put tags up there, click apply, and that's going to move that around. So you can customize this view however you want to get the right columns you're interested in and to order those columns in the way you want. We can also play about with these filters at the top in here, so we can do things like grouping them by location. So these are all West Europe, but you could change the view so you could see them under under location or subscription. Now the view I've made here and the arrangement view will be persisted for this particular view, which is virtual machines. If I hop over and look at app services, then you can see my view here is actually back to the default for app services. So they are per service that we're going to look at. Obviously, if I go and look at all resources, I can also make those changes in here, edit the columns for all resources. But again, that's only going to persist for this all resources option. So you can tune those however you want and display the fields that you're interested in only for those particular resources. Something I find most people don't use is this search bar at the top. So we can come in here and we can search for resources. So if you know the particular name of the resource you're after, so we'll have a search for smart, and it will show us resources starting with that name. And it will show resource groups. It will also show other things. So it's going to show marketplace resources that have that name, but also more useful, it will show documentation. So if we go and have a look and say, okay, I want to get documentation on how we upgrade AKS. And so that's going to then list the documentation on how to do that. So I can then click on that link and go directly to the documentation from here, rather than having to go back out and go to Google and search for the documentation and so on. I can get it directly in here. The next feature is going to be pretty useful for people who have to deal with lots of different Azure subscriptions. So if we go up here to the subscriptions and directories option, and you can see there is an option here that lists all of my subscriptions, and I can select which subscriptions I'm interested in. And this will be the default view for which subscription is going to be displayed to me in the portal. So I've got 2 of them picked here. I've not picked the last subscription. If I go back over to resource groups, and you can see when it loads that in this sublist, it's again selected the 2 I defaulted to there. It's not showing me any resources from the pay-as-you-go list. If I tick that, then it is going to show me those resources, and it's going to persist that. So when I go to my virtual machines, it will show me resources still from all 3 subscriptions. But if I refresh the page or go away and come back, it's going to default back to the 2 I picked as my default. So you can edit which subscriptions you're interested in to be the default view. Now, for me here, I've only got 3 subscriptions. It's not necessarily that useful, but where you're dealing with lots and lots of subscriptions, it can be really useful to only see the ones you're generally interested in as default. Similarly, if you're dealing with a lot of Active Directory tenants, you can also set your default directory in here as well. So that will be the directory that you're connected to when you log into the portal. You've also got the option to favorite directories as well, so you can click on those and they will then appear in this favorites list, which makes it slightly easier to find things if you've got a lot of directories to deal with. Another new feature that was added fairly recently, but that's been asked for a long time now, is the option to switch accounts. So if you've got a number of different Azure accounts that are tied to different logins, you can now go up to your picture here on the right and click on that, and you can connect those different accounts, so they're listed in the bottom here. And I can then click on that other account, and I can then load the portal as that user and see those resources, and then switch back to my other account nice and quickly. This is much better than the previous, which involved either logging out or running lots of different windows in incognito mode and so on. One thing to be aware of, it doesn't work quite so well if you're using ADFS to get single sign-on to the portal, because even if you add the different accounts in here, when you switch, it will still then try and log you in with your ADFS account and not the account you actually picked. But if you're not using ADFS, that works great. And the last thing I just wanted to cover here was Cloud Shell. So you're probably familiar with the fact that you can come up here and you can click on the Cloud Shell icon, and I can launch a CLI running either Bash or PowerShell right in the portal that's got all of the Azure PowerShell or CLI commands, along with a load of other commands already and libraries already built in. It's a nice easy way to just run some basic commands, list my VMs. It'll quickly allow me to do that. But one thing you might not be aware of is you can actually now edit files in this window as well. So if you click on this option here for Open in Editor, it will open an editing screen that looks a little bit like VS Code. And this allows me to come in and edit any files that I've got stored either in my cloud drive or stored or create files just inside the Cloud Shell, which are temporary. It allows me to come in here and edit those directly in the portal. It can be really useful if you need to make a quick change to a script or something you need to run without having to download it, open it in VS Code, edit it and upload it again. This is a nice quick way to do that. That's about it for all the hints and tips I've got for the Azure portal. If there's any others that you're aware of or that you'd like to share, please do comment on the video. If not, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I'll see you next time on Azure Snippets.